Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Well, it's finally spring. I'm going to take this off. No more winter. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 22nd day of May, 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text number 30, the last verse of the chapter. Saribhutadidaivam Mam Sadhyagyam Cha Ye Viduhu Sadhibhutadidaivam Mam Sadhyagyam Cha Ye Viduhu Priyana Kale Api Chamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha Prayanakale Pichamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha Sadhibhutadi Daivam Mam Sadhyagyam Chaye Viduhu Prayanakale Pichamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha Sadhibhutadi Daivam Mam Sadhyagyam Chaye Viduhu Prayanakale Pichamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha Sadhibhutadi Daivam Mam Sadhyagyam Chaye Viduhu Prayanakale Pichamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha Sadhibhutadi Daivam Mam Sadhyagyam Chaye Viduhu Prayanakale Pichamam Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha. Anyone online?
Sadhibhutadi Daivam Mam
Sadhibhutadi Daivam Mam
Sadhyagyam Chaye Viduhu
Sadhyagyam Chaye Viduhu
Prayanakale Pichamam
Prayanakale Pichamam
Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha
Te Vidur Yukta Chetasaha. Okay, word by words. Sa Adibhuta, and the governing principle of the material manifestation. Adidaivam, governing all the demigods. Mam, me. Sa Adiyagyam, and governing all sacrifices. Cha, also, yea, those who, viduhu, know. Priyana, of death. Kale, at the time. Api, even. Cha, and. Mam, me. Te, they. Viduhu, no, yukta chetasaha, their minds engaged in me. Okay. Translation. Those in full consciousness of me, Krishna, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. Purport. Persons acting in Krishna consciousness are never deviated from the path of entirely understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation, and even of the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and at the time of death, such a Krishna-conscious person can never forget Krishna. Naturally, he is thus promoted to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vṛndāvana. This 7th chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. The beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord. And by His grace, one can understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the same time, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how the living entity forgets Krishna and becomes entangled in material activities. By gradual development of Krishna consciousness in good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. He can also understand that this human form of life is an opportunity to regain Krishna consciousness and that it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Many subjects have been discussed in this chapter. The man in distress, the inquisitive man, the man in want of material necessities, knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth, death, and diseases, and worship of the Supreme Lord. However, he who is actually elevated in Krishna consciousness does not care for the different processes. He simply directly engages himself in activities of Krishna consciousness and thereby factually attains his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. In such a situation, he takes pleasure in hearing and glorifying the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. Hearing and glorifying, I think it means hearing about and glorifying. Anyway, he is convinced that by his doing so, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Dhrida Vrata, and it is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. This 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is the substance of that conviction. Thus end the Bhagavad purports to the 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of knowledge of the Absolute. So happy you could make it. Thank you. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I'm going to review the chapter, if that's all right with you. This is such an important chapter. They all should be reviewed, but this one especially calls out to be reviewed. So the chapter began with a new way, a different way of being able to become fully Krishna conscious. You remember the previous chapter was all about Ashtanga Yoga. 8 limbs, the traditional yoga system taught by Patanjali Muni. And Krishna did mention about pranayama, pratyahara, and sitting alone in a sacred place. He gave some very practical instructions. And but after all of that instruction, Arjuna complained that he doesn't think he can do it. And when you think about it, it does seem pretty difficult to go alone. No question of sex life or any companionship, to a sacred place and a lonely place, and to really, with simply your determination, to try to control the mind. Remember how Udadet Atmanatmanam Atmanam Vasadiyet Atmaiva Atmano Bandhur Atmaiva Ripuratmanaha. The mind of the living entity, one should uplift himself by his mind, not degrade himself by his mind. The mind can be the best friend of the living entity or the worst enemy. And in fact, in conditioned life, it's definitely the worst enemy, because it's through the mind that we stay conditioned and stay attached to this material world. So the mind is always the central point, actually, of activity for any yoga process. So Arjuna, he said, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadradham. This mind is very, very restless and obstinate, and is to control is like trying to control the wind. I don't know if you've been following the news, but there's been a horrific series of tornadoes and heavy storms in the southern portion in Texas and Houston and on east of there in the last few days, and great destruction and people getting killed. So wind can be an extremely powerful force. Anyway, Arjuna was complaining, I don't think I can do it. And Krishna is saying, it's difficult, yes, but it's possible through practice. And so he's encouraging, he's still selling this process. So Arjuna is still kind of pessimistic, so he just says, doesn't say I can't do it, but he says, well, what if I fail? After I give up my family life, I give up this life, I go to some secluded place and I start working, but I find it impossible, I can't go back, everything's changed, and so I'll be like a riven cloud, I'll lose both spheres. So Krishna says, no, whatever progress you make, if you fail after some practice in yoga, then you'll take birth in a family in which you can continue that yoga process. Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Brashta Vijayate. This is the phrase Prabhupada would quote, half a verse. And Shuchinam means pure. Pure means a family of yogis, a family of transcendentalists, that'll encourage you from birth. And even if it's not, it's Srimatam, a wealthy family, but pious. So you won't have to struggle to keep body and soul together. You'll be absorbed in that. You'll have enough time and enough, ability to pursue your spiritual life. So anyway, that's basically the answer. But Arjuna is still not really ready to take it up. And as Prabhupada explains in many of his lectures that I hear on this, there's a whole wonderful series of lectures on the 6th canto called the Yoga System Tapes, the Yoga System series. It goes through the whole chapter. So finally, Krishna, he basically gives up on this process, and he says, "Don't worry, yogi nama visarvesham magate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam samayukta damomata." Now you're back to bhajate, you're back to bhakti, not just controlling the mind, So he says, of all yogis, those who are always thinking of me within themselves, who are full of faith in me and worshiping me with transcendental love, are the best of all. So that's Arjuna. You can just hear him. He breathes a big sigh of relief, because he's a beloved friend of Krishna's. Krishna's a beloved friend of his. And in fact, we learn in the 4th chapter that he has been incarnating with Krishna in the material world. For whenever Krishna appears, he also appears. He was there when, at Krishna, as he said, I spoke this science to the sun god, who spoke it to his son Vaivasvata Muni, who then spoke it to Ikshvaku, and it came down to human society millions of years ago. And Krishna and Arjuna says, how is that possible? We're contemporaries. We were just born recently, Said, yes, Bahuni me vatitani janmani tapacharjini. Many births I've had in the past, and you have also had them with me. You have forgotten them, but I don't forget, because I don't change my body. It's this drastic change of the body that erases it's just a traumatic experience. Everyone forgets their previous life. So then Krishna begins to, explain why he comes, a famous verse, Yada Yada Hi Dharma, like that, in the 4th chapter. So the point is that the 6th chapter, there's important instructions in there about controlling the mind and not eating too much, not eating too little, which are very pertinent in Bhakti Yoga as well. And Prabhupada makes that clear. But then in the 7th chapter, Prabhupada talks about how the middle 6 chapters, from 7 through 12, and 12 is entitled Bhakti Yoga. It's a short chapter all about Bhakti, is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. It's right here. So Krishna begins with the words Maya Sakta Manaparta. The whole point is, the mind is the key, is to cure the mind of its attraction and involvement and fascination with the material energy and duality of this material world. That's what's keeping us coming back and suffering. So now he begins with, now I'm going to teach you how your mind can become attached to me by yoga, by taking shelter of me, but ashraya, and you'll be beyond all doubt, and you'll know all about me, and touch renew, just here. Now Prabhupada picks up on those last 2 words, and his purport is all about that. He quotes from the 1st canto, 2nd chapter, which is all about dharma. The sages in Naimisharanya asked, what is that supreme dharma by which the soul can be fully satisfied? We should be very interested to know the answer to that question also. And Krishna speaks this series of verses, which in itself is a full lesson in Bhakti Yoga. And Prabhupada often spoke on those verses, and we made it into a book. It's called Dharma, the Way of Transcendence. It's not distributed here in America, but I think it's distributed a lot in India. So it's all about hearing. Shrunvatam Sukata. The last five verses are the essence of the whole thing. And what he's saying is Shrunvata Sukata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana. That when one hears about Krishna, and in the previous verses he said, how can you become attached to hearing about Krishna? Cultivate that attachment by serving the Guru, by serving the bona fide Guru. That's what he says. So once you have that attachment, then you can, it's a very, very graphic metaphor, you can develop the sword of remembrance of Krishna. Yadanudhyasina yukta. Asina is the sword, and anudhya is like dhyana, it's like remembrance. Karma granti nabandhanam, by which you can cut these knots of attachment. Karma granti, that you've developed through fruit of activity, the bond which are in the heart. Chindanti, kovidastasya kona kuya kataratim. You see? So what does he say? This is earlier. It says, by that sword of remembrance you can cut it. So who would not be intelligent person would not try to develop that sword? But the point is, that sword of remembrance develops through hearing about Krishna. That's why it's Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. First comes hearing, then comes chanting, repeating, very important. That helps it fix the mind. And all of it culminates in constant remembrance of Krishna. Avismriti, Krishna Padada Vindayo, means never, not forgetting. It's understood you're remembering, and you're not forgetting. That's called constant remembrance, isn't it? Avismriti, not forgetting. So anyway, once one develops that desire to hear Krishna consciousness by the process of Bhakti Yoga, under the guidance of the spiritual master and the Shastra and the sadhus, then the result is these last five verses. Shinradam Kata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana. These kata about Krishna it makes you pious just by hearing about it. Just by hearing about it. Punya Shavana Kirtana and chanting. Ridyan Daksto, he's in our heart. Krishna's in the heart. And abhadrani vidunoti, he cleanses away the unwanted things like lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, intoxication, and attraction for this material world. He's cleansing it within our vidunoti, because he's surit. Surit satam. This word comes up again and then. Surit means the best friend who always has your best interest at mind, at heart. And he's in your heart. Surit satam, especially is the surit of the satam, of the devotees. And the result of that, this is the verse you may recognize, because before every Bhagavatam class, many devotees chant it, and I do too. Nashta prayeshu badreshu. When these abhadras are almost destroyed, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, by constantly serving the Bhagavad, the Bhagavatam and the Mahabhagavat, the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. Prabhupada makes that point in the purport. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke, he was glorified in the best poetry. Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Then your bhakti becomes fixed. You get to the point of real faith and determination, and nobody can shake your conviction, and no one can shake your determination to practice devotional. That's naishtiki, nishta, it said. Then, tada rajas tomo bhava, all of you're being affected by the lower modes of nature, passion, the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance, and their concomitants, kama lobhadya, which is lust, anger, etc. Cheta eta in anavidham. Your mind is not affected by them. You're fixed in goodness, and you become very joyful, prasidati. And then it emphasized in the next verse, you're progressing in devotional service. Evam basana manaso. Your mind is always joyful in contact with Krishna. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata, by practicing Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga. Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, the truth, the Vijnana, of Bhagavan is revealed to you by him. And Mukta Sangasya Jayati, you're liberated. You're free from the attachment of this world, and you're more attached to Krishna. And finally, Vidyate Vidya Grantisht, gist. By this process, those knots in the heart of attachment are completely cut. Vidyate. Chidyante sarva samshaya. Chidyante also means cut or destroyed. All your doubts are destroyed because you're getting more and more vigyan, direct perception of Krishna. There's no question. Chiyante chasti karmani, all your karmas eradicated, good and bad, no more karma. And then drishta evat manishore, and the translation of this, which is probably in here also. No, it was mistaken for a long time. But what it means is drishta, you see, within yourself, the Ishvara, the Lord. The Lord reveals himself. You see him in your heart. Drishta evat manishore. So, it all depends on that faith in the process of devotional service and cultivating hearing and chanting and remembering so that you can come to the moment of constant remembrance, which is, after all, what the samadhi is all about in the previous chapter, constantly absorption in the form of the super soul. So, we're going on with the chapter, Jnanam Tayam to Vijnanam. I am going to teach you knowledge which culminates in Vijnana. See, there's Jnana and Vijnana. Jnana is, I know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vijnana is that he reveals himself to you as the Supreme Person. There's no question, you see. By your sincerity and your purity, he reveals. So this science, that what I'm speaking to you now, will give you Jnana, knowledge, and culminate in Vijnana. Experience knowledge. Knowing this, you will know that there's nothing else to be known. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Well, that's pretty amazing. But it's rare. You have to be determined. Manushyanam sahasreshu, out of many thousands of human beings, only if you try for perfection, which in here means basically understanding your pure spirit soul. And out of thousands who have achieved that siddha, hardly one knows me in truth. So it's rare, but we can strive for it. And then he starts explaining the constituents of this world. This is called Sambandha Gyan: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. See, that's the first step. But above those, is the soul. The spiritual energy, jiva bhutam, yedam dhyate jagat. And what it means, we're actually sustaining the universe. We're sustaining our own little bodies, which are little universes, actually. Prabhupada said like that. And because we're here, we needed it. That's why there is a material world. All of these conditioned souls needed some place to act out their charade of trying to be Krishna, and then finally coming to the point of realizing this silly, it's self-defeating, and practicing Krishna consciousness. So there's these two, this lower energy, which is not conscious, the earth, water, fire, air, but are the constituents and of our body and of everything else. And then there's the higher energy, the souls. This combination is, all created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all that is material, all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I'm both the origin and the dissolution. So this we learn in all the Shastras. Brahma Samhita starts, Ishvarak Parama Krishna Satchidananda Anadi Radi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. The cause of all causes, behind everything, is Krishna, moving it through his own will and through his surrogates, his expansions, the Vishnus, all the demigods, they're all aids, and this is the way he's managing everything. And it's so wonderfully managed that he doesn't have to think about it. He can just play in Goloka Vṛndāvana, you see. That's the whole idea. But still, he knows we're here, and he wants to try to help us because he's our eternal Father. And then these really important verses, often quoted, Mattak Paratarang Nanyat. Krishna is saying there's nobody, no thing superior to me. Kinchidasti Dhananjaya, Mai Sarvamidambal, everything is strung on me like pearls are strung on a thread. Now, one thing about if it's a high quality pearl necklace, you don't see the thread, right? It's very tight and very. So that's the thing. We don't see Krishna, but he's sustaining everything. He's in every atom as the super soul. It's only because of him that things are going on. He's providing the knowledge, the remembrance, the forgetfulness to us and to every living entity. How does the dog know what to do as a dog? Because he's getting the information. Go here, bark there, do this. And he's infinitely patient. He stays with us through this whole creation. If we don't go back to Godhead, then he's with us, when we merge into the body of Mahavishnu. So Sute Maniganada, a very important verse. And then he starts a series of verses in which he's telling us how we can see him in our everyday experiences. Rasoham apsukonteya prabhasmi shasisuryava. Okay, I am the taste of water. Now how can he say that? Because he's the source of the water, he's the source of the tongue that we taste with, and he's also the source of the experience that we have of the taste. So everything is behind it is Krishna. These verses are meant to be where we have a revelation and say, oh, everything I see, everything I experience is Krishna behind there. Not just that, this craziness that somehow is working automatically, just by millions and millions and trillions and billions of years. Yes, they all came together, and then another 100 trillion billion years again. No, it was all. There's an intelligence behind everything. Any child can understand it, if you actually think about it. All this organization, and when it's going haywire, but aren't people thinking, hey, we're getting more volcanoes now, and now there's a series of earthquakes right here, and did you see northwest, northeast of us? If it comes out to the coast, then a big one will come, and find out about the Adidaivic miseries. So he's revealing this, and he goes through so many things: the light of the sun and the moon, Om, the word Om in the Vedic mantras, and the ability in man. Anytime anyone has any skill, and this fragrance of the earth, the fragrance of the flowers, the heat. I am the heat and the fire. I am the life of all the beings, jivanam sarvabhuteshu, and also the austerity of those who are austere. I am the seed of everything. You should know the eternal seed. I am the intelligence of the intelligent. So when do we not encounter these things? We're always encountering them every day, But the point is, if we remember these, we study this, and we keep it in our mind, then we'll experience Krishna's presence in our everyday life. This is much more practical than going alone and trying to wrestle with the mind. Strength of the strong, even sex life that's not against religious principles. Then he summarizes in text 12, know that all states of being, be they goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. Deluded by the three modes of nature, the whole world doesn't know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So these modes of nature, he's introduced that now, and that will be explained much more detail in the 14th chapter. But this is the way in which we remain bewildered in the material world, through these modes of nature. We're in a certain mode, we see in that mode, we feel in that mode, we talk in that mode. It's the predominant mode. Mode of ignorance, someone who's angry, who's depressed, who's lazy, who's sometimes violent. These are like symptoms of the mode of ignorance. Mode of passion is just enjoying. Where can I really get my enjoyment? How can I make a lot of money? That's the theme of capitalism. The whole thing is how to maximize the take, and you just roll over, people's welfare. So, going on. We're deluded. And the next verse is perhaps it might be up there near the most quoted important verse. Daivi yesha gunamayi mamamaya duratya. This nature of mine is divine because it's connected to me. Ultimately, Prabhupada says there's nothing material. Even these energies are connected to Krishna. There's Krishna's energy. So in one sense, they're spiritual. But we know that these are designed for the material world, and they're not conscious per se. But they're divine because they're connected to Krishna. So therefore, Daivi, the same word, Daivi Yesha Gunamahi, composed of the modes of nature. My Maya, because I created it, Duratya. Very difficult to cross over. In fact, on your own, impossible to cross over on your own. So that's Duratya. But, you know, he says, but, what's the way that we can cross over it? By surrendering to Krishna. Mame viye papadyante, maya me tang talantite. So this is a very nice inducement to take up Krishna consciousness, which begins with surrender. And then he goes on, of those who don't surrender. The four categories. Namam dushkrita no mudha papadyante. Those who na papadyante, they don't surrender unto me. Who? The dushkritinas, the miscreants, who fit into four categories here. The mudhas, the grossly foolish, those miscreants who are grossly foolish, those miscreants who are the lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. And he explains those in detail, and we're very familiar with them. They just walk out the door. And a very long important purport here. On the other hand, there's four kinds of people who do surrender. And they include four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. Now that second category can be thought of, and probably he takes it most of the time to mean those who are poverty-stricken, you know. But the poverty-stricken can also be understood to fit into the distressed. That's the very main way in which people are distressed, right? And then who would fit into the desire of wealth? People like Dhruva. You may remember the story of Dhruva, where he was the son of a king, and he was insulted by his stepmother, and so he decided he's going to be the heir of the kingdom somehow or other, you know. So his whole motive was wealth, beginning with. So the point is, this is very important. You may approach Krishna for one motive, but it will mature if you're under proper guidance into pure devotion. And that's what happened with Dhruva. He was determined. Dhruva, that's what his name means. His name means fixed, right? Dhruva. You know, he couldn't be dissuaded by even Narada Muni. Narada Muni tested him. You're too young. I'll teach you later, you know. Thank you very much, O sage, but if you can't tell me now, I'm going anyway. You know, 5 years old, into the forest. He has a determination like Prahlad, you know. So then Narada Muni said, okay, and then he taught him a system. And it was interesting because it was very austere, you know, what he taught Dhruva. And there's no question about it, you know, he's getting a yoga system. But it was infused with bhakti. First of all, he's chanting the holy name. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Vasudevaya, that's the name of Krishna. He's also, if I recall, he's taught some rudimentary deity worship. Because when you go out to the forest, you always have to find some water, some stream, a little pond or whatever. So there's one authorized way of deity worship where each day, each morning, you know, make a little statue of your worshipable deity. May not be so refined, but there it is. And you do worship whatever way you can. And when it's finished, then you dissolve it, you know, and you go on your way. So that was, he was doing that. And so the point is that even though his motive started out, you know, as completely material, the processes that he was doing, it was making him very powerful, and you know, and eventually he was not even eating; he was just breathing deeply, and that was disturbing the demigods because they're all tied into his breathing. You know, I don't know how it worked. The process of entrainment means that he's entrained the universal breathing, and they were having trouble breathing, and they appealed to Vishnu to please go down and do something, and so he came down. You know, Dhruva was meditating on Vishnu in the heart. That was one of his meditations. He opens his eyes, and there he is. And it describes how he went into ecstasy and everything, you know, fell down. And so, but at that point, by seeing the Lord and through the purificatory process that he had gone through, he didn't want the kingdom anymore. His famous verse, Sthanabhilashi, means desiring a certain position, namely the kingdom of my Father. Rather, better than that, Brahma's kingdom. Sthanabhilashi tapasistitoham. I was situated in severe austerity. You know, tapasistitoham. But now I see pram praptavan. I've attained you. There's Vishnu has come to bless him. You know, tam praptavan, who are devu munindra guhyam, who are hidden even from the greatest demigods and the leading of the sages. Munindra guhyam. So now I understand, Kacham Bachindvan, I was searching after a broken piece of glass in the form of this big kingdom greater than Brahma's, the foolish kid. But now, Kacham, but Abhidivya Ratnam, I've attained this divine jewel of your darshan, as opposed to the broken glass. So heck with that, I don't care about it anymore. So he says, Swamin, O Lord, Swamin Kratato Snivlarang Niyache, I don't want any other benediction from you. You've just given me everything, your darshan, Very mature. It's a famous verse. Not in the Bhagavatam, but it's, Prabhupada would always quote that verse. So this is important for us as well, because in Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, people come for all kinds of reasons. They come for the prasadam, they come for the fellowship, they come just because it's fascinating, which is fine, Whatever brings you into contact with the devotees is auspicious. And so, but if someone is serious, if someone is fortunate, he'll get a book, he'll read, and intelligence will be purified, so that you realize what a depth of knowledge and value is in Bhakti Yoga, is in Krishna consciousness. So such a person will remain cured and be receptive to taking up the process and hopefully, maturing that way. So what's happening there is that your motives are being are transformed and purified. You may begin just like, for some material reason or out of curiosity. Here is described 4 different kinds of people who are distressed. That's a very common way people go to God. Oh my God, my child just got cancer. If I believe in God, let me go to the temple, the church, and pray. Like anything. That's why. But if they don't, so that going to church, but where's Krishna? If you don't have Krishna and you don't have the holy name, then you're going to remain on that platform of just praying for God to be your order supplier. You may or may not get relief from that, depending on your pious background and so forth. But the Prabhupada would always tell the story about how during the war in Germany, the wives were left home, and then their husbands, their fathers, their brothers, their children, their sons, all went off to war. And these were very, very devout Lutherans, right? Isn't that the predominant religion, I think, and a variety of Christianity in Germany at the time? So they would all go to the church and pray very, very fervently. You can imagine the crying and everything, please, please, please bring my husband back. And many of them didn't come back. It wasn't their karma, There was, either they got killed or they came back and they were grievously injured or whatever. So many of those ladies, they became atheists. They lost faith in God, because they didn't have a mature understanding of the relationship with Krishna and with God, and their own karma and their loved one's karma. So then he goes through and he describes the different levels of these people who do approach him, and the best is the jnani, one who's really looking for knowledge and knows something about it. One who's curious is also good, but curiosity needs to mature into genuine desire to know and faith that you really learn from the sources that are here. You see, so that's most dear. They're all very magnanimous and good, but the best is the jnani. And then another super often quoted verse: Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam papadyate vasudeva sarvam iti samahatma sudurlabha. Here he's giving one definition of Mahatma, the famous one. After many births of cultivating this knowledge, he says, Jnanavan, one who is truly in knowledge, surrenders unto me. That's the proof that the knowledge has really matured and you've really gotten it. And understands Vasudeva Sarvam, that Vasudeva Krishna is everything. He's everything because he's the source of everything. He's the source of everything, the controller of everything, and like that. Vasudeva, and such a Mahatma is very rare, you see. And he goes on, then he has a few verses criticizing demigod worshippers. The famous verse, Kames Tattva again, and one whose knowledge, it's all about knowledge, is stolen away by material desire. Kama, varieties of material desires. They surrender to the demigods, they think they can fulfill those material desires. That's the whole meaning of the Indra Yagya. Krishna is proving you don't need to worship any demigods. And they have their own rules and regulations they get from the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, but it's materialistic. According to their own natures, they worship me, you know. And yo yam yam tunam bhakta shariyachitam. Whatever form they want to believe in, I make their strength, their faith strong. I am in everyone's heart, the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. See, so Krishna is responding. If you want to worship him, then he'll be very eager to make that faith strong by guiding you, you know, in the right direction. But even if you want to worship Indra or Devi or, you know, Shiva for material thing, then he makes that straightforward. So with that faith, you worship and you get your desires fulfilled. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. And the key is antavattu palantation. Those fruits are temporary. You beg for material things, everything material is temporary. So what did you gain? So he criticized, ultimatism, not very intelligent. Then the punchline, this is, Deva Deva Joyanti. Those who worship the Devas go to the Devas. Those who worship me, my bhaktas, come to me. And there's no comparison. Even if you go to Indra-loka, eventually your time is up, you have to come back down here. And you know that. That's a real fly in the ointment. I know it's all temporary. You know, anything temporary is ultimately disappointing. So that's the thing with the demigods. And then he criticized the Maya bodies, the impersonal, avyaktam vyaktam appanam. They think the impersonal light has become me, that I. Unintelligent men don't know me perfectly, think that I, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to this small knowledge, they don't know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. My higher personal nature. The personality always is higher and more, it's closer to the origin than the impersonal. So Krishna is the supreme absolute truth is ultimately a person. That's the foundation of this movement. I'm not known to everyone. I'm hidden by Yoga Maya. The fools cannot know me, that I am unborn and abhyam. This word abhyam appears most often of any other word in the Bhagavad Gita. Inexhaustible. I know everything past, everything present, everything future, but me no one knows. And then we come to these few verses at the end. I think I dealt with it. Ichadvesha samutena, dvandva mohena bharata, sarvabhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa. Coming into this material world, how do we come into the material world? By becoming bewildered by the apparent duality of the material. This is the same thing that's said in the Bhagavatam. Bhayam dvitiya abhinaveshitak said. Dvitiya abhinaveshitak means absorbed in the duality of this world. And turning our back on Krishna and absorbing in the material energy. That's the source of fear, bhayam, because suddenly we're out of Krishna's protection. We're thinking we're going to control it, but we can't control it. We're controlled by the material. Dvandva mohan, the delusion of duality. The delusion of duality. All beings who have come here in this creation have been bewildered by that the duality of this world. What's good, what's bad, what's pleasure, what's not, and this and that. And then the final conclusion is yesham dvandagatam papam, those whose sin is over, antagatam papam, it's come to the end. Jananam punyakamanam are simply performing pious activities, means bhakti activities. They become free from this delusion of duality and they worship me with a very strong vow. This is how, this is the idea. Is that you have to be free of sin, you practice 4 regs, come under that, and simply performing pious activities means bhakti activities. You become free of the delusion of duality, and you worship Krishna with great faith and great determination. And what's the benefit? Jara marana mokshaya. They take shelter of me and get free from old age, death. They're liberated from those things, and they know Brahman thoroughly. Te Brahma tad vidukristam adhyatmam karma chakilam. And then he's making a list here, transcendental, everything about transcendental activities, and they know what. Yes. And then he has another list. Those in full consciousness of me, this is the verse we read today, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of material manifestation. This is the Adibhuta and then Adidaiva, the governing principle of all the demigods, and Adiyagyam, the governing principle of all sacrifices. Then such persons who know that in true, at the time of death, they can remember me and come to me. So that's the end of the chapter. And this will, these last few verses are the basis of the beginning of the next chapter. Arjuna wants Krishna to explain, what is that Brahman? What is that Adiyatman? What is that Adibhutam? And can you explain what the Adidaivam is? And what is karma anyway? You know, like that. First few verses he answers. And then just as a coming attraction, we're almost through out of time, in text 5, 6, and 7, he gives a nice little summary of what Krishna consciousness is all about. One who remembers me at the time of death certainly comes to me. And whatever you think of at the time of death, that'll determine what you get in life. Therefore, next 7, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty. Does that sound like Hare Krishna movement? Here he said duty of fighting, and that's because it's Arjuna, the duty of washing the pots, duty of going on, the duty of cleaning. That's the whole business right here. Mamanusmara yujyacha. Think of me and wash the pots. Think of me. For Arjuna, it's fight. With your mind and intelligence dedicated to me, you will certainly come to me. That's the whole, everything there. Periodically through the Gita, he'll give some of these summary verses. All right, we have 1 or 2 minutes for discussion. Go ahead. No? Nothing? If not, poems. A couple of poems. Okay. It just feels right. The summary verses, Manmana Babaman Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru Mame Vaishasi Satyam Te Patijane Piyosi Me Sarva Dharmam Parityajya Mam Ekang Sharanam Braja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshiyasyami Ma Shuchaha. He ends up Ma Shuchaha, don't worry. Just think of me, become devoted, worship me and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend. I promise you this boon I shall bestow. Give up all dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjuna. From anxiety be free. So even the concept of dharma, there's no real dharma going on in the spiritual world. Dharma means a duty you have to perform for some goal, you know. I mean, and we need to know what the right dharma is, because if we practice the right dharma, it will engender bhakti, ahoitiki. That's the first verse of the one. Sabai pangsang paro dharmo yato bhaktir hochaje. That is real dharma, which results in pure devotion to Adhokshaja, the transcendental Lord. But that bhakti has to be ahoitiki and apradiyata, free of any material desire, ahoitiki, and unbroken. And then the soul become fully satisfied. Sorry, it's still not a poem. So I'll finish the poem. Yeah, so those 2 verses of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
So would it be considered dharma to be considered spiritual though still?
I'm sorry?
Krishna. You said dharma would not be, your dharma wouldn't be considered spiritual if it was, servitude or bhakti yoga. I mean, isn't that... No,
it's spiritual because it culminates in pure spiritual, and it's pure spiritual activity. It culminates, but in the spiritual world, there's no dharma going on. Krishna says, "Sarva dharma parityajya," give up all dharma. You know, in other words, there's only one thing you need to do. There's only one thing: surrender to Krishna. And under that rubric comes, and then how do I do that? Okay, then we get the instructions of the Shastra, the instructions of the Guru, the instructions of the Sadhus, in the association of devotees. There's all kind of, well, how do I do that? But all of it is simply trying to become completely attuned to Krishna's desire at every moment. What's my duty to perform now for the pleasure of Krishna at this very moment? And if you're always choosing, okay, I'll do it, this is what I'm going to do, then you've come to the end of dharma. You practice the dharma that results in spontaneous, loving devotional service to Krishna. It's not that the gopis are there, wondering, what's the right thing for me to do. They're spontaneously doing everything that Krishna wants. That's their whole life. Yeah. So the dharma kind of graduates into the spontaneous bhakti, spontaneous loving devotion. You can call it Dharma if you want.
Okay.
But you see what I mean? It's a process to get to the end. You know? So in one sense, you know, and there's something called Sanatana Dharma. Krishna Prabhupada talks about in the introduction, where you can say, oh, okay, that's the eternal activity of the soul in the spiritual world. But usually Dharma is something, okay, it's a duty I have to perform, you know. I'll do it, even though I don't really want to do it. But it's not like that. Eventually, if you want to do it all the time, it's not Dharma. Your Dharma is to go out and play with Krishna all day in the fields. Cool, you know. I don't. It doesn't sound like Dharma to me. It sounds like the most ecstatic activity, you know. Anyway, it's just a little bit of a semantic thing, you know. All right, we better adjourn. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Hari Hari Bo. And we will begin the glorious chapter 8 on Monday. What could be more glorious than this? Attaining the Supreme. Even the titles of the chapters are very encouraging. Oh, this Gita never gets old, you know.
Ever fresh.
Yeah. Prabhupada says that. He experiences it. Okay.